KSC, Presence. This Iowa man's obituary is beyond brutal, and people can't process that his sister wrote it. When Tim Schrant died, his sister Pam Kopriva-Barnes saw an opportunity to tell the world what her brother was really like in his obituary. And it's safe to say that she didn't hold back. Because while her sibling was known for his sharp tongue, it was her who got the final say on his legacy. An obituary is basically a piece of writing reporting on the recent passing of a person. Sometimes they contain a detailed account of that individual's life and achievements. Alternatively, they may simply announce the death or outline funeral arrangements. Traditionally, obituaries appeared in newspapers, and the longer the entry, the more important the person tended to be. Back in the olden days, newspaper reporters would research and write obituaries themselves. However, it has become more common over the years for families to pen their own tributes to lost loved ones. Their heartfelt words could then be distributed in print or, as is becoming increasingly common, online. Often an obituary will generally acknowledge the death of an individual and express pain for their passing, while also celebrating the joy that person created during their lifetime. With that in mind, the notice might detail the achievements of the dearly departed, in both their personal and their professional lives. Some consider obituaries as a lasting legacy. The articles may be something that people will look back on in years to come, to gauge an idea of a person and the life that they lived. As a result, some people now prefer to write their own obituaries. That way, they feel as though they've had the final say on their lives. A noted individual who was given the good fortune of seeing his obituary before his death was Swedish scientist Alfred Nobel. When the dynamite inventor's brother died in 1888, the press accidentally published Nobel's obituary. And in one particularly scathing report, he was described as a merchant of death. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Nobel was distraught to realize that he would largely be remembered for causing death and destruction with his invention. Consequently, he founded the Nobel Prizes, awards that are handed out in the fields of literature, chemistry, physics, medicine and peace. And it was his intention to honor actions that had been the greatest benefit to mankind. So in putting his name to something positive, Nobel was able to change his legacy for the better. And perhaps more of us would reconsider our life's path if we took into account the lasting impact it may have long after we've departed. Because it's likely none of us would like to be the subject of a totally savage obituary. One person whose obituary may not have been as expected was Tim Schrant. The resident of Spillville, Iowa, died in March 2019 after being diagnosed with cancer. However, as his sister Pam Kopriva-Barnes' candid final tribute attests, he may be gone, but it will be a very long time before the colorful character is forgotten. To begin with, Schrant was born in June 1955 to parents Bill and Mary. He was the fourth out of 8 children and attended St. Wenceslas, a Catholic school in hometown of Spillville. Furthermore, after graduating from South Winneshiek High School in nearby Kalmar, Schrant decided to join the Army. After his time in the military, Schrant spent more than 3 decades making tools and dies as his profession. He also married Crystal Hilmer, with whom he had 2 sons, Cody and Lydia. And after splitting from their mom, Schrant went on to have a 13-year relationship with a woman named Cheryl Murray. Through Murray, Schrant became a stepfather and eventual step-grandfather. He also had 2 granddaughters through his biological children, adding to his already large family, which included many siblings, nieces, nephews and cousins. But despite the size of his clan, it seems that Schrant was always the life and soul of the party. That why then those close to Schrant felt his untimely passing at the age of 63 acutely. He received a diagnosis of an aggressive form of cancer in early March and would not see the month out. However, throughout his short battle with the disease, Schrant often had his family by his side. And even as his illness progressed, Schrant's unique personality shone through. He still wore his shirts mostly unbuttoned in his signature style, refused to quit smoking, and continued to use the F word with wild abandon. He simply refused to let cancer rob him of his character, a fact his sister Kopriva-Barnes happened to notice. One night, during the final days of Schrant's life, Kopriva-Barnes was finding it impossible to get off to sleep. Consequently, she sat down and began penning an obituary for her brother. Obituary. She wanted to encapsulate Schrant's nonchalant attitude and cantankerous charisma in her tribute. And the result turned out to be hilarious. Announcing her brother's death in his obituary, Kopriva-Barnes wrote, "Tim Schrant made his last inappropriate comment on March 29, 2019. If you are wondering if you may have ever met him, you didn't, because you would remember. For those of you that did meet him," she added, "we apologize, as we're sure he probably offended you." Kopriva-Barnes went on to say that Schrant was world-renowned for not holding back and telling it like it is. And she proceeded to give some examples of her brother's devil-may-care approach to life. These included one memorable moment from his childhood when he came to blows with one of the nuns at St. Wenceslas School. Referring to the incident in Schrant's obituary, Kopriva-Barnes revealed, "He got into a fisticuff with a nun. In fairness, she probably started it. You didn't take a swing at him and not expect one back." And from the sister's account of her brother, it appeared that a disregard for the rules was a common thread in the rich tapestry of Schrant's life. As Kopriva-Barnes revealed, Tim's fondness for authority, his own, not others, followed him to South Winneshiek High School in Kalmar and later into the Army. This provided for many interesting episodes and stories, detentions and demotions, and a few run-ins with the law. Not just locally, but globally. It seems that Schrant may have settled down somewhat by the time he'd established himself as a tool and die maker. However, he still wasn't particularly concerned about fitting in with his colleagues. Tim worked with many friends and a bunch of morons. His words, not ours, his obituary reads. And it wasn't just Schrant's playful aloofness that made him a maverick. Kopriva-Barnes revealed, "Tim leaves behind a hell of a lot of stuff that his family doesn't know what to do with. So, if you are looking for a Virgin Mary in a bathtub shrine, you Catholics know what we're talking about. You should wait the appropriate amount of time and get in touch with them." However, while Kopriva-Barnes' tribute to her brother showed that a sense of humor ran in the family, there were also tender moments in Schrant's obituary. For instance, the sister recalled how her brother had relished in his self-appointed position as king of his younger siblings, her included. Tim spent his childhood and early adulthood ordering them around and, in general, tormenting them, she wrote. In the Schrant's obituary, Kopriva-Barnes went on to pay tribute to her brother's two great boys, who he was extremely proud of. She added, "He will be missed by his two granddaughters that he adored and taught to cuss." Furthermore, she also expressed her regret that the wider family wouldn't have any new material now that great orator Schrant had passed. According to his obituary, Schrant was always the center of attention. Many relatives wanted to hang out near him, because you just knew he was going to say or do something good. It's not that he was such a great storyteller, it's that he was the story, it read. However, Kopriva-Barnes promised that her brother's legacy would be kept alive by those he'd left behind. What's more, Schrant's family were convinced that he was going to a big party in the sky. He will be having a reunion with his infant daughter Ashley, his brother Duke, his dad Bill Schrant, many aunts and uncles, and a handful of cousins that passed before him. Tim was in charge of getting the beer and ice for our family reunions, so they will be happy to see him, his obituary read. Wrapping up her tribute, Kopriva-Barnes confirmed Schrant would be remembered to those who knew him as an eternal rebel. A common line in obituaries is, "He never met a stranger." In Tim's case, he never met a rule he couldn't break, a boundary he couldn't push, a line he couldn't cross, and a story he couldn't stretch, she wrote. In a sweet tribute to Schrant, the obit continued, "Tim was anything but common. Despite his crusty exterior, cutting remarks and stubbornness, there is actual evidence that he was a loving, giving and caring person. That evidence is the deep sorrow and pain in our hearts that his family feels from his passing. Speaking of Schrant's final days, Kopriva-Barnes wrote, "Tim led a good life and had a peaceful death, but the transition was a bitch." And for the record, he did not lose his battle with cancer. When he died, the cancer died. So technically it was a tie. He was ready to meet his maker, we're just not sure the maker is ready to meet Tim. The obituary came to a close by citing a cause close to Schrant's heart, booze. The final paragraph read, "We are considering establishing a GoFundMe account for G. Heilman Brewing Company, the brewers of old-style beer, as we anticipate they are about to experience significant hardship as a result of the loss of Tim's business. Keep them in your thoughts." While unconventional, the irreverent obituary seemingly summed up Schrant perfectly. Its author Kopriva-Barnes seemed to think so, anyway. In April 2019 she told City Pages that sending her brother off with a traditional tribute would have been akin to burying him in a suit. Which, for the record, they didn't do. Instead, Schrant went to his grave in St. Wenceslas Catholic Church graveyard wearing his usual choice of a Western shirt and jeans. His family refrained from unbuttoning the shirt as he would have done due to the treatments he'd had to his chest. But they did bury him with a bottle of old-style beer for the road. Later, Kopriva-Barnes revealed she had been writing Schrant's obituary at the exact moment he passed away. She was so engrossed in her endeavors that she had failed to see a text she'd got informing her of her brother's passing. "It was therapeutic to me to write it," she explained to City Pages, before adding, in her signature, "It was like a dump, if you will." Prior to writing her brother's tribute, Kopriva-Barnes had often read obituaries, but had largely been unimpressed by their formulaic content. "If you're wanting information that's devoid of personality, you might as well go to the courthouse," she told City Pages. And perhaps that's why Schrant's obituary has proved so popular. Since appearing on the Schluter-Ballock Funeral Home website in March 2019, Kopriva-Barnes' words for her brother have been shared far and wide. The tribute has since been described as possibly the best obituary ever written. Meanwhile, Schrant was labeled the orneriest man in Iowa by the Des Moines Register. Furthermore, the guest book for Schrant on the Schluter-Ballock Funeral Home website has received reams and reams of comments from across the United States. And the influence of the obituary doesn't end there. That's because it has even provoked a response from as far afield as Australia and the United Kingdom. On the page, someone who clearly knew Schrant wrote, "Tim was larger than life. He lived life on his terms. You either jumped on for the ride, or he run you over. He was one of those people that you rarely meet in life but also will never forget. Farewell, my friend, you will be missed." But Schrant's obituary also touched strangers who'd never met him in their lives. However, thanks to Kopriva-Barnes' colorful account, many of them felt like they knew him. "I never heard of him, nor did I ever meet him. But I know I would have loved him. In fact, I think I actually do," wrote one such commenter. Speaking of Schrant, another person said, "He sounds like a great guy. How lucky you all were to have him in your lives. I can only hope that when I go, someone loves me enough to write an obit or eulogy like this about me. It will have to be tweaked to fit me, of course, but I would love it. God bless him, and what a hoot he will be in heaven." And even in his death, Schrant had managed to inspire some. "Now that's how to live life," one commenter wrote. "Bold, full throttle, with gusto, and no apologies. Tim inspires me to return to my former ways of living the same, before I insanely allowed the world to beat me down, but not out. If there is a heaven, I am sure it is in full party swing with Tim's arrival. Rock on, Tim." From his obituary, it seemed like Schrant had lived life on his terms and had provided no apology for it. And thanks to his sister's heartfelt tribute, his attitude had made him a viral sensation. That was a turn of events that Kopriva-Barnes found funny, because in true Schrant fashion, her brother had thought social media was stupid. So he'd have seen all the attention he was getting as an epic waste of time. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to subscribe.